So today's agenda, it's related to, as I mentioned earlier, is for business rule. Okay, and we will talk about some of the, you can say, basic concept of the business rule. Then we will look into the demonstration part. Along with it, there are some list of the consideration, as well as there are some limitation that we will be also discussing. And in the end of the session, we will talk about some future aspect of what are the upcoming session that we are going to take. Wahaj, if I can give you the session and you just start explaining about the business rule, then rest of the session we will take care of it.
Sure. Okay, so
Great.
let me quickly share my screen. So, first of all, so what's a business rule? As a generic definition, it's like uh, b- b- a rule which is proposed by a business in a particular application, right? So similarly, in the Dynamics 365 or Power Apps, we have something called business rules where you can define some logic using very easy to use UI, user interface, without writing any line of code. So it's more of a configuration where you create rules for the UI on the client side. Again, business rules are for client side. Yes, there are, I'll discuss in further. There are server side possibility also, but usually we do it on the client side to, make the user interface more friendly or to impose some restrictions or any kind of processes if we want to, not process actually, to to incorporate logics. I would say very simple logics. Okay, so one thing, it will allow us to do some logics without writing code and with the very simple user interface. Okay, now what kind of rules or actions we can do using rules? So rules are not just some kind of conditions or validations. There could be some actions also. As an example, we can see the set column values. So that means uh, we can set a value of a column of a field based on a condition. uh, let's say if we say if the account belongs to a certain industry type, you select it, you want to fill in the some particular code, so we can do that. Similarly, we can clear column values, we can set date, we can set requirement level of the field. That means, uh, again, same example, if the customer belongs to a particular industry, let's say retail, we want to capture their tax number. So that tax number is a field that will make mark it as required. So in normal scenarios, it is not required, but in some scenario it is required. So that's another example of that. So we can not only mark it as required, we can also mark it as optional, right? Similarly, we can show or hide columns. We can enable, that means lock a field or unlock a field. Or in other words, enable or disable columns. Or we can also show validation errors to user to make it more, understandable for the end user. And we can also, uh, do some recommendations based on the data he has entered, right? So these are some examples, the generic examples. So more or less, these are the things we usually do with the business rule. So I'll explain you this further in the UI itself, in the form. Okay. One thing we need to understand is there is something called business rule scope. Let's now take an example, I think, before we go into this. So let's say on our contact form, okay, as soon as I would say a user has to enter at least one street address. So we have two fields. One is street one, other is street two. Okay. If only one field is required, let's say street one, we can just go ahead to the field configuration and just mark it as required. So in that case, it doesn't matter which form it is, it doesn't matter what condition it is, it's required on the table level. So it will always ask you to fill that data in order to create or update that record. Okay. On the contrast, business rule can do more conditional requirement level. That's requirement level is just one, by the way, scenario. Uh, as an example, let's take that. So let's say if I want either user enter street one or street two. if none of these values entered, we will not allow user to save the record, right? In that case, we can create a business rule where we'll say, okay, if street 1 and street 2 is empty, then throw a error message to the user. Otherwise, clear that error. That's one. Okay. Now, this rule is required on what level? Is called scope. As I don't know if you know or not, but in model driven apps, so Dynamics 365, we have multiple forms. So on the same form, we can have a form for, let's say, it could be any reason. One form could be for admin users, others could be for the normal users. Another scenario is you can design forms based on the business units. Let's say marketing uses the contact form, they have a different view of the contact entity form. Uh, but on the other hand, the salespeople have very different view. So now we need to decide this rule is applicable only for the salespeople or also for the marketing people, right? In that case, what we can do is we can select the scope to a form. That means run this rule on a particular form. If we want to run it on the all forms, we can select all forms options. So let's say if we have 10 forms, it will run on all forms instead of manually selecting all, right? Another level is called entity. The entity means your rule will run on server side. All other options, the form or all form or the multiple form option, always run on the client side. That means it's a JavaScript created for you behind the scene, which runs usually on the browser side or on the client side. So in that case, let's say the street 1, street 2 validation will be only applicable when user is entering data from the user interface or using a browser or a mobile app or a tablet, right? On the other hand, if user imports that user data using data import, or the user uh, creates or updates a record using an API, let's say web API or REST API, in that case, this rule will not be, applied. This rule will not execute at all because we set the scope to either form or all forms. So if we want the rule to run even on the data imports or while creating or updating the record programmatically using APIs, in that case, we need to apply it on the server side. So that means the rule runs on the server side even if you are not on the form or UI. So it depends what kind of rule it is. In some cases, you have to select entity. That depends. Even if, let's say, there are some rules you want to apply even when user is importing data, or there is a, let's say, integration with your front end website, which has a contact us form. When user enters the data in the contact us form, there is a lead created using the web API call. In that case, you want to also ensure that business rule is applied. In that case, you have to select entity. But if user is only using it on a form or a particular form, so we can select either form or all forms. Okay. So let me make it more clear for you. I'll just now dive into the actual system and I'll show you. I'm not sure how many of you have already tried creating a demo environment, but let me pull up this screen. So this is the demo environment. It's a trial environment. I've selected the Sales Hub app. I just noticed because I just created the trial now. Previously, I did not notice. It was by default selected as sales trial was selected as the new app where they had more, uh, I would say wizards to let you learn the system. If you want, you can do that also, or otherwise we can use the more, I would say production ready environment, which is Sales Hub. So again, not, I just don't want to repeat everything, but just to be on, uh, yeah, let me be, I mean, more elaborative on this part. Uh, we can have multiple apps also in Dynamics 365 environment. Each of these app is a model driven app. So this is something we are learning about. So when we say Dynamics 365, Dynamics 365 consists of that, as we saw in the last video, is consists of a Dataverse database. Then actually it's an environment, right? An environment is a database which will, it will have its application also or multiple applications. installed on top of that Dataverse environment, and these are those applications. We can also create our own application that will definitely cover. I mean, we do not have to always use the Sales Hub or the customer service or the marketing app. We can always create our own application, and that makes more sense when you have multiple departments using the system, as the app will allow us to only choose option that is required for that particular uh, department or business unit. Anyhow, that will save it for some other video. For now, just if you have already the trial, I would recommend you to use the Sales Hub. You can also try Sales Trial. That will help you to learn the sales processes, because they have it very they have designed something like that. Okay, so I'm already on the Sales Hub now. uh, to I'll first, let's just go through that. On the left hand side we have navigation, as we already saw. There are multiple tables here connected on the left side. As an example, I'm going to take contact today for business rule. Let me open up a record. As you can see, I have multiple forms here. Right now I'm going to use the main or out of the box default main form called contact. So this is selected here. We will try to implement the same rule that we discussed on the street 1 or street 2. Okay. Okay. So to define a business role, there are multiple ways to do that. Multiple ways in sense, you can design either through legacy interface that we can open from this small gear icon. This called settings, and then we click on the advanced settings. As soon as you click on the advanced settings, it will take you to this page. Here we can go to the customizations or solutions section. If we go to the solution section, we can create a new solution to start work with, and add the entities we want to work on, and we can apply business rule on that. Or there is another way which is called customizations. We can go here, we can click on the customize this system. This will open up the default solution. So every environment will have a default solution where it will have all the components available in the system in default solution already added for you. So that means if you create a new entity, even if in a new solution, separate solution. So solutions are just packages, how you can package your components, right? This is how, this is like not, I should not use this word, but just to give you an example, this is like we create projects in the Visual Studio, and it has components, it has CS classes, it will have your DLLs, it will have your configuration file, your project file. Similarly, not similarly actually, but I mean the basic concept is a packaging. You can package your work in a particular solution. There are multiple kind of solutions, namely unmanaged and managed, but again that will cover in solutions topic. So yes, usually we start by creating a solution or using an existing solution instead of going to the default solution. But again, that's not a restriction. You can still expand the entities tab, go to the contact, and start with creating the business rules on the business rule tab. This is totally fine. But it's always a good idea to start with a solution, because you always want to move that from one environment to the other. Let's say from the development environment to the pre-production or UAT environment, and then from pre-production to the production. So if you do it in the default solution, it will be a very hard problem for you to move it, because you have to export all default solution, which is not a good idea. That means you are going to replicate everything is that is available in the system to another environment. And more than that, it's always tough for you, because there are a lot of dependencies. Let's say default solution contains some entities which are still not available on the pre-prod environment, or there's a mismatch. You will always get those conflicts. So in short, what we can do is we can go to the customization and solutions, or directly solutions. We can create a new solution. We can name it, let's say I would call it contact business rules. Okay. Again, this is something solution can be designed based on your modules, based on your deliverables, based on your sprints. That totally depends. Okay, so publishers are the records who defines who is authoring this solution. So again, this we will cover. I will just for now this today's lesson because this will otherwise go beyond our time. So I'll just select the default publisher. uh, you can create your own publisher. It's like if you work as a software service provider or as a vendor, you can create your own publisher, so that goes under your name. Other thing is, all any new fields or table you will create, it will have prefix on the physical names based on the publisher. Also there are also option set values, but again, that's not for today, we'll cover later. Okay, we'll give it a version and that's it, we'll just save it. Okay, like if you see, as soon as you create a solution, there is nothing in it, it's empty, totally empty, right? It says there are no solution components. So what we can do is, that's the beauty of the solution, we can pick and choose what we need in this solution instead of adding everything like we usually do with our like normal development life cycles. Uh, we only export or try to build, take the build at differential builds, right? So for that, we can create solutions here. Okay. Business rules are, there are multiple components on the left side. There are entities, option sets, there are web resources, processes, plugin assemblies, and so on. So uh, business rules, fields, tables are called entities. The forms, the views are part of entities. So that means if we want to apply a business rule, we will first add an entity, the entity that we want to work. If we are creating a new table, we can just simply say new entity. Otherwise, we can go ahead and say add existing entity. So I will just search for contact here. This will give me all the entities available in this environment. I'll choose the contact. I hit OK. Okay. So by default, you would see these are called the assets, like all the forms, views, charts, fields, keys, relationships, messages, business rules, hierarchy settings, and dashboards are part of this. Uh, Entity will be available here. You can pick and choose what you want to take, what exactly you want to take into this particular solution. So if I want everything, I can simply say add all assets, but again, it's not a good idea because we should only take differential things for at least for the existing entities. So what I will do is I will only select this entity. I do not need any view as of now. I do not need any form as of now. I'll just keep it like that. And entity metadata is also something I'm gonna exclude. The reason is metadata is entity settings that I'll show you what are these settings. So that again, let's say if I do not want to move to my other environment, because this solution just should only create business rules as per my current need. If I need, I can always select this. But for now, I will just skip it. I'll say finish. That's it. It added. If you see now, this account entity in this solution is totally empty. There won't be any forms. There will be no views. There will be no charts, feeds, etc. Right? Because we did not select it. If we want to see all the components, we have to go to the actual default solution, or we have to click here on the contact. Let me just check it. I guess I want to refresh it. For some reason, it's not. Uh, yeah, it will work now. Okay. So I can always go and add required subcomponents or add components. In that way, I would be able to add what I really need. Okay. For this example, I will switch to the business rules. And you see there are no rules as of now. We'll create a new rule. If there are existing rules, I can always add subcomponent here, and it will give me the list of existing business rules from which I can pick and choose and add in this particular solution. So what I will do is I'll just hit new. Okay. This is the business rules editor. It's very simple, it's very easy to use. First thing first, click on this thing and give it a useful name as a best practice. So I would say street address rule. Description is not required, but it's always too good to have, so it works like a documentation to others. Street 1 or street 2 must have, sorry, data. Okay, I'll just do fine. Okay, now any business rule will have at least one condition. That means it runs on a condition always. Okay, what kind of conditions I can apply? I can apply conditions based on the values available in the in your table. Okay, for example, I can select, I can say address 1, street 1. If I want to check it against a particular value, I can choose either equals operator, I can choose contains, I can do begins, end with, does not contain. I mean, these are your usual filters you see even in your Excel application, right? So you will see these filters in most of the uh, places while applying conditions or in Dynamics 365 or Power Apps, model driven apps, right? So I will say for this one, I just want to see if this particular field contains data or not. So for that, I can choose say contains data. If operator address 1 street 1 contains data, okay, I can add an other condition like and or here. I can just click say okay, add a rule 2 which says my either address 1 street 2 does not contain data. So that means both of these. So I'm choosing and here. If I want one of these to be true, I can choose or, of course, but in this example, I will do and. So the rule one is street one contains data, sorry, does not contain data, or rule two does not contain data. So I would say, okay, I'll give it a display name so it's easy for me to understand. It's not required, but it's a good or best practice. Streets do not have data. In that case, I'll just click. If I click, do not click apply here and do any other action, my changes will not be saved here. So I have to click apply. Okay, now you can see the business rules, conditions has the text that we mentioned, so it's very easy to understand. Or otherwise, we have a text view in the business rule, which works like more or like less like a pseudocode, right? If address one street one does not contain data and address one street 2 does not contain data. So if you have a very long running conditions, you can easily just look into the text view and understand what's happening in this particular business rule. Okay, so this was the condition. Now we have a true part to this condition or false part, right? This is designing just like a flow diagram. It's very easy. So we say, okay, this is fine. In if the both fields do not have data, that means in the true case, I want to raise an error on address fields. What I can do is I can say, uh, go here and I say show error message. You can see there are multiple actions. One is recommendation. Recommendation is just like a recommendation text that you can give to a user just to, let's say, it's not a compulsory information, it's just to guide the user. I can lock unlock fields, I can show error message, I can set a fields value, I can set a default value, I can set a business rule, I can sorry, I can set the business required, I can set the visibility also the of a particular field. So for now, I will choose this show error message. I will click plus here because I want to add this set error message, show error message component here like this. I can click on this tile and come here and define where I want to show the message. I can see, sorry guys, let me just put this away. My bad. Okay, sorry. Okay, so I can choose the field on which I want to show the error message, or I can simply say a general message. For instance, I can say, um, street 1 or street 2 should must have data. Okay, or we'll make it more user friendly by saying please provide either street 1 or street 2. I'll add. So now I can hit apply. That's it. So this is done. That's all. So this is as simple as that. If we or I can rename this always by saying show error. I can say apply. Yeah. Okay. Now let me save this. Oh, sorry. I need to select the field. I missed it. Let me show it on the street one. Address one, street one. My bad. Okay. Come on. Or street two must have data. Okay. I'll just apply it. That's all. Okay, it's done. Now, if there is a requirement, I can also, set the uh, no path or false path here. In let's say we'll do another example here where we will let's say lock a field and then we also want to unlock a field on a certain field. So I'll cover there. Okay, as soon as you've saved the business rule, it will not run at all. Now you see the text view is already updated. So how to run this field? For that, we need to make sure we save it and after that make it activate. So by default, it will be in draft status. You see it's draft. You can see here small or the activate button is there. So that means we need to activate. If I do not activate it, it will not run. So let me click on activate. It will take a while. It will, there should be a confirmation dialog. Yeah, here it is. It's taking more than expected because it's a trial environment and trial environments sometimes are slow. Try to open it again. Okay, let me activate. Yeah, now it's activated. The status is activated and now we see the deactivate. For any reason, if we want to stop the rule, we can just mark it as deactivate. Okay, so now if I go here on the contact, let me refresh. Okay, you see this is fine. Let me remove this, the street one. You see it shows us the error that street one, either street one or street two must have data. If I enter data here, it should go away like that. Similarly, if I do not have data here, I can say okay. I can show error on the both fields also by adding one more show error message on the street two field. I say I'll work on one. Give me full address, please. Yeah. That. Now if I save it, I can save. So this will work on both on save or create. Yeah. Okay. Now, if I go to another form, let's say information, and let's assume this is being used by some other BU or use set of users, I go ahead and see it works, right? I say again, no, this is fine. I live here. work like that. Okay. Now let us test another scenario on the same business rule. We discussed the scope, right? So scope either is all forms, by default it all forms, or we can run it on a specific form. So I will say, let's only run on the contact form. Okay, I selected the only contact form here. I say save, and after that I have to activate it again. Okay, it's activated. Let me give it a refresh. Now, what should be the expected behavior? Because we have only done it on the contact form, if I do not have this data, this particular street 102, I should get the error, right? If I have data, I'll work again. It's fine, right? If I go to the information form or any other form for that matter, and if I remove it, you see, let me remove this completely, no error at all, right? Because the business rule is only set to run, or the scope is on a particular form. So if you want to run the rule only on two forms, then you have to create a copy of this rule and run it on only on this particular form, right? Or run it on the all form as per your requirement. So that's one thing. Okay, you see, we get that. Great. Now let us do a little more, interesting one. Just saying, it's not straight save. Okay, let me go to the details, and I will just show you is okay. Okay, if my marital, no, not my, the contact's marital status is married, we want to make sure the data is entered in the spouse or partner name. Okay, if it is single or divorced or widowed, we will, this is fine, this could be optional. So let us do this, uh, yeah, business rule. Okay, so let me create another business rule. Same way, I'll just click here, go to new. Now again, I'll just do a little faster. I will say, okay, on the entity is my contact, that's fine. Just pick up the marital status. Do you have it? Yes, you have it. Okay. Now you see, because the field is an option set or it's a drop down, the editor is smart enough to understand you, it will give you different operators, like this one is equals to a particular value. It's no more like a text filter, but again we have does not equal contains data. These are basic filters are there, otherwise we can select it. I can select either multiple or one. So I say, okay, if it is married, I would say if married, apply. If it is married on the true path, I would like to do, uh, make sure the field is required. Which field? Spouse partner number. And what should be the status? Business required. So we are setting is required. Uh, Partner number is required. This is not required to give the display names like that, but I think it's much more uh, readable for others to work on it. Okay. Okay. And in this case, what will happen if I save and I will activate it? What will happen? Let us see. We'll do step by step. Okay. This is activated. I can go ahead, refresh, go to the details tab here, and I will do married. You see, it's already married. So yeah, this is required. Now, if I do to try to save it, will say no, this field is a must to be filled now. Okay, if I select the single, whoa, what happened? It is still required. This doesn't seem to be right. Uh, it should only ask required. The reason is in the business rule, we need to now follow the false part when the condition is not met. That means if the contact is not married or the false or uh, no part of this, path of this condition, we have to reset the requirement level of the partner number field. So what we'll do, we'll again use the same step, add like this, set business rule. I will give it a name, partner number 3. Partner number is optional. Okay. And what I will choose, spouse partner number. I will mark it as not business required. Yeah, that's fine. Apply, save, activate, activate. Okay, like that. Now if I refresh, I should able to see the updated rule, which is married, it is required. When I choose single, it's not required. When I'm divorced, it's not required. Widowed, it's not required. Right? So this is as simple as that. Let's do something more interesting. I would say, okay, if it is married, this is required, or and also the anniversary is required. Okay. If it is single, divorced, or widowed, we want the spouse partner number name to be filled as NA or not applicable. That's, let's say it's a requirement from business or some other system that you should do it like that, or just take it as an example. So I can do that also. Okay. So what I will do is I'll go to the same rule. I have my or conditions already there. So what I will do is, yes, in this case, the business required, yeah, partner number is not optional. So what I will do is I will add one more action. Which action? I want to set field value. So I will choose where I want to add. I will add it here. I will say, okay, which field? Spouse partner number. I can set the value either based on entry here. That means I can hard code it, or I can assign it value from another field. Let's say I want to copy a value from another field, let's say a date or something, that can also be done. And there will be a lot of scenarios like that. But for if this example, I will choose value. Or if I want to clear the value, I will choose clear. So I will go for value. I will set the value to n slash a. Sorry, a. Fine. I just say set n slash a, apply. Okay, here also, because it is apply, if I go from divorce, single, or widowed to married, I want to make sure this field is set cleared or empty. So in that case, I will go ahead and I will say set field value. I'll just click here. I'll say okay, same thing, spouse and partner number. Yeah, sets, just clear the field. That's all. There. Apply, save. Okay, so now if I refresh, okay, so married, in case it is required, if I select it to single, the value is also set to NA. Divorce, same. Widowed, same. If I go back to married, it's empty and someone has to enter the value here. Okay. Similarly, let's do one more example. I would say the birthdays. If I choose a birthday, I cannot select something. I would say, let me test it. Yeah, see, I can do that, right? Out of the box. So um, let me give the number. Yeah, it's done. Okay. Let's make also a very small rule which says birthday should not be in future. Okay, let us try that. By the way, just to explore, I can show you some other cool things here. Okay, we check the error message. We can also say in case if uh, the contact is not married, also set field, I would say lock unlock a field. Which field I can choose? I can say okay, the anniversary, yeah, anniversary. Let's lock it. If it is uh, married, sorry, not married, let's make it anniversary field to lock. In case of married, I will say uh, let's make it unlock field, um, anniversary. Similarly, I can choose either hide and hide also, so it works in the same way. So instead of just locking it, it will just hide the field on the form. Let me activate it quickly. Yes, please. Okay, let me quickly refresh. Okay, I didn't save. I don't know why. Okay. Let me try divorced. You see, this became locked. I cannot modify it. If it is married, it is available. I can do that. Okay. So we said we'll quickly do a rule based on date because I wanted to show you that. Okay. One thing, date fields will have some limitations. For example, if I say anniversary, not anniversary, we were on the birthday. Yeah, birthday. I can check it against a particular value here. I can do a comparison based on a field, but it is, yeah, 1 second. Okay, birthday equals, I want to select a formula here. So I can say, I can compare it based on a particular field. There is nothing like you will see here, like today or tomorrow, right? You do not see. Let's say the birthday should not be greater than uh, today, right? If you see, we do not have that option here. Of course, I can say is not greater than or equal to. I can go ahead and select a date here, but that doesn't work, right? Because if we select it today here like this, tomorrow it will not work like that. It will be still 8-2. It should be 8-3, right? Tomorrow. So these kind of rules are something you won't able to do using business rule, where in these kind of scenarios we have to use JavaScript. That's our next thing that we'll do. So that is something I wanted to show. But there are still, you can do, there are ways, right? You can store your we can compare it because to another field. We can add a field on the contact where we always store today's data, but again that's not a good idea. I would say it's maybe it works, by the way. So we can do that. So there are some limitations on the date. What other limitations we have? We cannot hide show of section like this marketing section or billing section. Sections again has to be controlled by JavaScript. Similarly, the tabs, something we cannot do. Okay, one thing we said in the slide that we can also set a default value, or let's say as soon as this contact form loads, I want to make sure that the let's say connecting field, let's say it's street 3 should be set to some text. We're just taking it as an example. Okay, now we want to run it always, every time the contact form is loaded. Okay, so how we do that? If you click here, create a new rule, you will notice that you must give a condition, but we want to run always. So that means business rule not work. Yes. So what we'll do is we can create a JavaScript and run attach it to the onload event of the form. But there is a trick that I want to show. You can do this in the business rule also. How? We will choose the field that we are sure will have data. So I can tell you some fields that will always have data. Whatever you do, it will have. One is created on, the other is owner, if it is ownership entity. So we can do something like say, okay, if created on has contains data, then I would say, or I can try on the owner also. If the owner contains data, in that case, you just set a fields value. What will set address 1 street 3 to hello. Okay, I'll just apply it. This one was fine. Yes, it's fine. I'm not giving names just to, but save the time because we are almost finished with the time. I'll just activate it and let's see how it works. Activate. You see, it didn't work. Really? What's the scope? Shoot. Let me check. It's sorry. I need to change it to owner, I guess. Why didn't save? Maybe I forgot to apply it. Contains data, apply, save. Show. Yeah. Okay. So let's refresh and see if it works now. Yeah, you see this worked. Okay. So yeah, so there are some tricks you can always run it on load like that, or otherwise JavaScript's the option. One more thing I wanted to tell you before quickly I mean finish it off. We can, let's say after this, I can also, you know, add more conditions if I want. If this happens, do this. If this happens, then that. So yeah, you can make it as else if and that kind of things. You can always do that. Yeah, so I will just stop it here from the demonstration part. Let me go back to the presentation because I want to save some time for questions also. So let me just pull up my presentation again. Yeah. So okay, these are some considerations we'll discuss quickly. So the following actions are not available on the Canvas app. So these are the model driven apps you see in the Dynamics 65. So show hide columns, enable disable columns, create recommendations is not available. Business rule don't work with following column types. Multi-select is still not respond. Let's say so like normal option set. If we have a multi-select, so in multi-select, you can select multiple options. Let's say you can select single and about source. I'm just giving an example. In that case, if you want to run a rule, that will not work. Then file is an attribute that will not support it. Language is also something where we do not have these business rules applied. Okay. Other consideration, the form scoped, as I discussed, only runs on the client side if you select it to the form or all forms. If you want to run it on the server side, you have to use the entity, or if that is also not possible due to some reasons, you have to go for the plugins or workflows for that. uh, okay, the execution of the business rules is always enforced. uh, that means it will run if it is activated. That's all. The execution order of the client side script is that the system JavaScript will run. So there is already a layer of system where the all Microsoft written JavaScript is there. Then the custom JavaScript run, and in the last the business rule will run. So it will be more helpful for you to see in the next session when we do the JavaScript. So if we have applied some logic through JavaScript, that will run first, then after that the business rule will run. Okay, business rule to set or change a field value, the JavaScripts. Okay, if we set a fields value using a business rule, there is a way we can register our JavaScript function on the fields. that will not trigger if you set it from the field. But again, let's cover it in the next session. So JavaScript method, okay. You cannot call a JavaScript method from a business rule. So business rule are only with the uh, provided actions, which is setting a field's value or clearing it, setting the field's visibility, setting the field requirement level, showing a error message, showing a recommendation. So, but these are again, this covers a lot of scenarios. And again, for a super user or even for end user, if he has access, he can very easily design, or as a developer yourself also, you can easily design a business rule without writing a code. It's very easy to stop it. Just you deactivate it, you activate it, you can copy it to create another rule, so on. So it's very easy, and it's a very good sport, I would say, from Microsoft side. Okay, these are some more considerations where we say business rule doesn't work if associated fields are this is very important even for your JavaScripts and for your business rules. If the field is not available on the form, it will not work if it is set on the form level, which is understandable because it's run to the client side. The JavaScript, because what happens, business rule is converted to JavaScript behind the scenes. It will not able to find the field on the form, and so it will have a problem. Okay, this one we already covered. Business rule will not able to do any actions on the tabs and sections. For that, JavaScript is the only way. Okay, you can apply up to 10 if else conditions, which is, I guess, quite good, because if you do more than that, then there's something wrong with the logic. We should always divide into multiple business rules. Okay, okay, this is very interesting. The business rule can only be applied on the same table field. That means if you're on the contact form, you cannot check a condition on the parent account. Right? That means the parent table or child table. So it will only run on the current table fields, current entity fields. Okay, exception handling and debugging here is not available. It's quite tough, but yeah. And there are some limited actions available, as I showed you as an example. We cannot concatenate the field values to set. Let's say we want to do concatenate or plus to in text fields, that's not there. I also show you some limitation with the date comparisons. So yeah, there are some limitations always there. Okay, so what's the alternate to the business rule? Of course, the JavaScript that we are going to cover in upcoming sessions. So JavaScripts are just code that we use the XML client library, which is JavaScript library that is provided in context of the Dynamics 365 or model driven app. It's very easy to use. We'll see that and how we can do more stuff to apply business rules using JavaScript. Okay, I'll leave it here to Adnan now. I guess I've covered most of it. So Nan, I guess you can
Yes,
start
thank
sharing
you.
your screen and quickly finish it.
Yes. Before we are just wrapping up the session, I just wanted to showcase the modern style, means what is being currently we are doing on the normal scenario, which is, we can say, the new interface. So just like I just need to a couple of minutes here. So here you can see that's the new, you can say, interface, which is currently most of the people, or let's say the Microsoft pushing to work on the PowerS platform. And here, if you see it here, let's say if you want to work on the business rule, how you can find first is related to the solution, then you have would require to navigate to the solution, or even though you can go with the directing on the tables and you can find the table where you want to work. And if you just scroll down, you can say you're just going to expand the tables and whatever the table that you are expecting, because in PowerS, entities are called tables. So that's the new terminology that we need to also discuss it here, that we will refer tables instead of entities, which is the, you can say, older name. So inside a table, you will see the business rules. So logic is same, application is same. The only comes here about the navigation. As Wahaj, he well explained about within the solution, which is the legacy, you can say interface. Now in the new interface, you would be able to see it from here. Okay. And similar way, if you just open any particular form and you want to see, okay, where are my business rules? Because business rules can be managed within the form itself. So let's take example that you are here on your one of the table, which is the contact table, and you want to see the business rule. Either you can directly navigate here to business rule, or alternatively, here is also coming up here as a customization, or you can see within the form also. So a part of the management that you would be able to see in the different areas, but the base is same. There will be no difference applies there. So let's take example. I'm just jumping to the contact form, and you can see it here in my configuration. So it will just open up the my you can say the form, which is you can say the designer, and inside the components, not in the component, here it is the business rules. So whatever the business rules are there, it will be listed down here based on whatever the activate. So that's the only addition that I would like to add here. Next, what we are have a schedule. From next Tuesday, we will start talking about the JavaScript. First, we will conduct a session on the basic stuff, means how to write a code, what are the methods, what are the functions. So just like a introductory about the JavaScript and about you can say very lightweight JavaScript module that we are going to talk about it. Then in the later stage, on August 16, we will be this you can say more focused on the advanced development, where we will see some of the topics related to the API calls, cross-functional methods, and much more. You can say you will expect there. I think Uzair, we have a question. If you can ask Uzair.
Okay, I just need to ask that, for example, we have made a business rule on a specific entity, and now I want to use this same business rule in on every entity. Like you just made on contact, I just need it on account as well. I just need it on the lead level as well, and on opportunity as well. So every time I need to configure this business rule, or I can use it as a, I mean, template or something like that.
No, every time you have to create a new business rule for another entity. So yeah, you have to do that. The reason being is, of course, the fields could be very much different from current entity. Their physical names, everything will be different. So you have to create another rule for another entity. But for the same
Right.
entity, you can do a save as and do minor changes, but that will be for only current entity.
Because on the
All
background, the
right.
schema is normally maintained with respect to the table or entity. So that is the main thing, because the relationship, because you can consider this particular path is just like a plugin, or you can say workflow assembly that you are going to configure. Because one time that you have set it up, so all the parental information means the related information about the table entity, they are normally tagged on the background. So you wouldn't be able to replicate, but you can do the replication within the same, means you can make a clone of save as the existing business rule on the same table or entity, but it wouldn't be possible for other entities, means you can't take the you can say the configuration from one entity to another entity or table, you can say.
All right. Okay.
We can conclude the our today's session. uh, Once again, really appreciate for your time, and see you next week. May God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.